Let's see how much of a shitstorm this state of the game is going to be. Sup, Hutch? Is the microphone audio okay?
Hello everyone and welcome to State of the Game 154. It is April Fool's, which is kind of, I was going to say fortuitous, but it's really not. Because today we are very aware, oh sorry about that, that the chat's going to be pretty spicy. I just want to make sure that you know that we need to make sure that things stay as respectful as possible. Hey look, I mean, we respect our audience enough to do this stream. Even though sometimes it's hard, we would just hope that you respect us enough to try and keep chat.
You're talking about respect, but you fucked over the community.
And warranted. But keep it constructive, be respectful, be cool, and we're going to have no problems. All right. I'm going to make sure that we bring in Chris and Bruce and we get started with the thing I know people want to talk about. We want to talk about the sanctions that have been taken against accounts, like the suspensions and stuff. So we're going to kick it off with the thing that everyone wants to talk about, us included. All right, Chris, Bruce, how you doing?
Hi there.
Hey guys.
You should all be coming through nice and loud. People
Awesome.
Also saying, hey, this is a pre-record. No, that's definitely not the case.
No.
Because we probably would have made sure that Bruce's camera didn't look as film noir. But
I'm in my French period right now,
There you go.
Yeah.
Right,
I also don't think that pre-recording this would have worked in these times from working from home. Like getting that all set up is quite difficult, and then streaming it and everything. I don't think that's going to help us.
Yeah.
Would have been a hell of an April Fool's joke.
I mean, that's
yeah, Hutch, I'm not going to do party
Not
chat while this is on, right?
too
All
late.
right, so let's kick it off. I know,
Yeah.
people will be spicy. It's understandable. The thing is, we've never been, and this is something I'm proud of, and I'm not proud of much, but this is one thing. We've never been ones to shy away from difficult streams or difficult conversations. So let's get cracking with it. Chris, can you give us a little bit of also? Let's start things off with a bit of context, a bit of history about what's been going on. So for people who maybe don't know, or are just showing up into the chat and being like, "What is happening?" Where are we at? Yeah,
so again, I just want to mention that because you said it in the intro. So we'll address the suspension wave right now and the DPX exploit right now, and then we'll also move on. So if you need to clip it or whatever you need to do, this is the time. So we were made aware of a DPS exploit that was done by interacting with a turret, and there were different variations of it and all that stuff. And we were trying to fix it as quickly as we can, but unfortunately there were different levels of the fixes that went out that didn't fully work. So people found new ways to do it. And then we were finally able to fix it to a point where we were comfortable to look into other things that would happen to the people that have systematically exploited this bug, right?
Can we just hit the timeline a little bit? So when did this happen? Because I think the date of the 17th is going to be, something.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So it's the week of the 17th is basically when we were made aware of this. We also, if I remember correctly, already put out a fix on the 20th to work on this and improve the situation. And then over the weekend, we learned that there was more, and we did more fixes the week afterwards to help with this. And then basically last week is where we were at a point where we first had another fix go out that stopped the interaction to allow the ridiculous amount of damage stacking. And I want to say this now. Yes, we are aware that there's more out there, and we're going to work on that. But at that point, we were also lucky enough to have the time and breathe over the weekend to make sure that we can look at data to identify people that have used the exploit. So, and I say lucky not because we're lucky in terms of, we just found it, but it's like it gave us some more time to look at the data and also find out what are the criteria that we want to use.
Sure.
What data are you
So
using?
we're
Because
now
evidently
in
your
the
data,
situation
you're
where
banding the wrong
yesterday,
players.
people
So
who had their account
you're a bit
flagged
fucked up there,
that
mate.
activity. We won't go into exactly the numbers of people that have had that, or exactly the numbers that have been used to detect that. But those people were given a 1-week suspension and a rollback to the 17th, correct?
Yes, that is correct. Yeah. I also want to say, like, I've seen some comments of people saying, like, oh, you know, like, you probably looked at my group, or you looked at, like, I did something with other people and stuff like that. I just want to clarify, and Hamish said it very well, we will not tell you how exactly we detected it, simply because we don't want other people to avoid this detection method in case something else comes up and down the line.
So your
But we looked at
detection
a
method is
account.
flawed then.
So we didn't look at who you were in a group. We didn't look at if you were doing something else with some people, if there were 50 million other people, it doesn't really matter. We really looked at your account and what you have been doing with the data and the criteria that we had. So this gave us a very strong confidence on the suspensions, because we could rule out that you were basically just caught in a random matchmaking group. That had nothing to do with the suspension at all.
Sure. One of the things that I've also seen a lot of people talking about is, you know, we're using our methods of detection for these things, but you know, the narrative around false positives, right? Some people who are saying that they've been grouped up with people or it happened. I've been talking to some people who have been part of the team that have put this suspension wave together, and also it's better to call what it is, because there have been no bans. Let's make sure that we call it what it is. No one has been banned, so everyone who's had action taken against their account will be able to play the game again next week. But when we do get reports, and you should report if you feel like actions have been taken against your account unfairly, do let us know. That's the same with everything. Every time there's bugs or things that you don't think are going right, we do want to know about it. But those have been independently looked at where we can on those cases. And what we've seen is that, in reality, those accounts that have claimed that have been shown to have that they've been basically exploiting. That's not to say that there haven't been some false positives, so do keep letting us know if you have been unfairly had sanctions taken against your account, so Ubisoft support can help you out.
Yeah, and that is more a general thing, right? Like if you ever feel like there's something wrong with your account, or if you feel that you weren't even online the last 2 weeks, reach out. We, again, have been very diligent on doing this. That's why we didn't do it last week. We took the extra time, and that's where we are right now. One thing that I want to also say, because you brought it up a little bit, narrative, right? So I've seen a lot of people on Twitter tagging me and
I already
on
did,
Reddit
Hutch.
and everything, saying like, oh, you know, like they suspended like 50% of the player base. Nowhere near that amount, not at all. We're also seeing a lot of people that had no idea what that exploit is. You have to understand, you know, Reddit is not the universe. There are a lot of people that have never been on Reddit. They never go on Twitter. They don't do anything. They just play the game on their Xbox or on their PlayStation or the PC and Stadia, and they just play with their friends and they have a good time. We have millions of players, and while the suspension wave was significant, it was nowhere near 50% or anything like that. So I just want to stop that narrative, and also then have that discussion end up of, you know, being misleading, where people are saying like, oh, you know, like next week there will be no players anymore, there will be no matchmaking. Absolute nonsense. There will be enough players for you to play, and again, the majority of people did not use any exploits.
It's also worth noting that there has been statements made after the fact about what will happen to people. There's been reports of other ways to do similar exploits and that sort of thing. Can we be very clear about what will happen to people who do such things that are against the terms of service? I guess in both cases, if they have already had sanctions taken against their account, or if they haven't.
Yeah, I think it's really important to once again clarify that we do take actions when we can verify for 100% what's happening. So if we find an exploit, if we can reproduce it, if we can fix it, all that stuff is great. And then again, we will look at our data. We can't look at player reports only. You know, we can't look at screenshots or on clips or whatever. That is not enough for us. We need to be 100% certain that what we're doing is correct. So we, for every exploit, no matter what it is, we will look at our internal findings. Obviously, we're going to use the reports that we're getting to make some connections and all that stuff. So please send them over. That's totally important. But then on your first offense, as we now did it, you'll get a 7-day suspension. And if there's another exploit and you haven't learned from the first exploit happening and you're using it and you're getting a suspension, the next one can be a permanent suspension. That means you will lose access to your Division2 account.
Great. Okay, cool. I think we're pretty clear on that. I think players know what's up, so you know what to do.
Yes.
If we do come across anything else we want to say about the situation, we will do so. But like we said earlier in the stream, we have a lot of other stuff to talk about because there are constant maintenances and updates to the game, and we want to address those too. Again, like I said before, if you feel like there's been sanctions taken against your account unfairly, do let support know or let us know. But as it stands right now, if we're looking at those things independently, we haven't found a false positive yet. And we have been looking at that. Okay. Bruce. Sorry, man. You awake? Or are you doing your best Yannick impression? Can't tell.
Well,
I actually think maybe they've...
that was interesting. They were being
Oh my
very
God.
careful what
My
they were
computer
saying
has
there,
actually
weren't they?
frozen. I'm not even kidding. They're not doing their best Yannick.
Let's be honest.
My laptop has frozen. I'm going to restart that and get them back here. Who knew? I'm not even kidding you. We'll be back. Let me just cut to this and I will bring them back in a sec. I actually have to force restart my laptop. But the good thing is I'm not doing the stream on the laptop. I'm doing it actually on my other computer. The joys of working from home. That is actually poetic. I mean, yeah, we're throwing this stream together from home on a bit of a jerry rig, and these things happen. Have I been licking my paintbrush?
Alright, so hurry up, Hamish. Get into the 8.5 patch notes then.
Chat is really moving today like a hero. It's tricky because it's hard to respond to it when we can't really read the big ones. Ban the laptop. Alright, I will ban the laptop. Back in. Hopefully I can get Chris and Bruce back in a Discord chat real fast. Redundant systems. Yeah, see, this is how you go to run a stream. See, if my computer had frozen, no one would know what was happening. But I'll use this opportunity to tell you how the setup's put together. Because right now I'm in my home. I have a laptop that I'm running Discord off. That's running it for the NDI. I do want to make sure that I close a few things so we don't get some notifications, but should come in pretty quick. We'll see. I mean, I know people... Oh, hang on. I think I got you back. Let's, all right. I think we're okay. All right. No IT. I don't want my new software updates. Maybe. All right. I think, can we hear you, Chris?
Hutch, are you looking at the Twitch chat?
No, it's not. Yet. Need to do some stuff. You guys can just keep going. Try and adjust this on the fly. It's really fun. Chris? You do? Nice.
What? Who's he? He's a community developer, manager.
Oh, I know what it is. Okay. Almost there. Streaming bug, real cool. I mean, it is, you know, side effect of working from home. Sorry about it, chat. Almost there. I've got my NDI source almost running. How about now?
Let's see how it's working now.
Oh, yeah, I figured it out.
Yay. Cool.
There we go. We are up and running again. All right. Hi, guys. Welcome back. Bruce, where we left off with you, I thought you were doing your best Yannick impression, but you were actually just frozen.
Am I live? Okay, am I moving?
Yeah,
Yes.
you are. Fantastic. We wanted
I'm
to
not a
talk
French impressionist painting. I'm just a French film noir.
There you go. So TU 8.5 is scheduled to come out next week.
Yes.
There's some key things in there. Control points resetting when changing global difficulty, allowing people to replay them. The one I want to talk to you about, Bruce, the Striker gear set stack's not working properly. You up to date on that one?
There's a lot of
not
RIP Division
personally,
in their chat.
Okay.
worked on that. So I'm not entirely sure what the status is on that.
Okay. I'm told it's fixed next week,
Unfortunately.
so that's cool.
Yes,
Um,
it is.
right,
Nice way to put Bruce in the spot.
Sorry, Bruce. The balance changes for specific NPCs that are coming next week. How about
Yeah,
the balance changes
Those are
there?
some that Mackenzie has worked on. I think, Bruce, you,
Okay.
you might know some of the BTSU changes and things like that, right? Like, I know that you mentioned that there's more of those coming as well.
Yeah, again, so that's more Mackenzie's domain. I can talk more about sort of general balance
Mhm.
RPG stuff, but we are absolutely still, we're addressing and monitoring the current overall balance of the game, and we're now focusing more on particular outliers, like warhounds and certain status effects or elements that are in the environment that are causing pain points, like poison or fire or gas. These sort of things. We're doing our best to find the edge cases that are still not behaving the way we want. Like I said this earlier offline in our chat, that at no point do we expect you, or there should be no mechanic in the game where you're running along and you've got full health or armor and then you're just one shot. Like that's not intentional. So when we find those instances, we're addressing them as we can.
Okay. Good to know. Sorry, I just slapped
But
my
we
thigh.
can segue into discussing sort of the state of the balance overall and how things are going. I know I don't know if we want to stick to the original script, but
You do
or if
you,
we
man.
wanna-
I like this segue.
Yeah, one thing that I want to point out before we move on. So the 8.5 changes that are coming next week and the exact days to be seen. Obviously, again, we're working from home. That also applies to other people that are not in our studio. So like third parties that have to validate our builds and everything. They also need some more time. So we will get you an exact date out as soon as possible. It's likely to be the Tuesday, which is our normal maintenance. And if you haven't seen the post yet, so on our general forums, there's a thread that has all the changes that are coming with 8.5. As Hamish has said, for example, the biggest one, I think, for many people is that you can control point reset by changing global difficulty. So if you want to have a deep dive into those changes, have a look. And then now we can talk about
Finally, they
the general
can
balance. I
finally
think that's a
fixed
good
it.
segue.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point about the sort of the work from home situation. It's definitely people ask like what's happening at Massive, what are we doing? One of the biggest things that we're doing is adjusting to the work from home situation, and there's no way, full disclosure, it's definitely had an impact, and it's made it difficult for us to have as much clarity or visibility on what everyone's working on. So it's difficult for me to necessarily comment in confidence on particular things that are falling under certain designers who, we have our syncs when we can, and we try to talk as frequently as often. But it's certainly challenging, but I feel like we're starting to get our a grip on it, and finding our momentum again.
Maybe on that topic as well, like I think just to give you a view into the studio as well, normally like Bruce and Mackenzie and everybody else, like they share a space in the office, right? So it's much more easy to just overhear conversations. You see people drawing something up on the whiteboard. You have way more frequent meetings as well. I think that is a fact that, for me as a comm dev, I'm not as impacted.
Yeah, I
because
noticed
I do most of my
the chat
work,
is exploding.
I can do it on the phone basically.
Mhm.
But I know for you guys, it's really, really difficult because you can't just like walk over to somebody and ask them.
What's
You
this
have to
stuff,
chat
like
it up, and then
5,500
maybe
people
they're in a
watching
meeting
it
right
on
now,
Twitch?
or on
I guess the most I've
text
ever
chat is
seen
always
it.
a little bit confusing if you don't know exactly the intent or the full context and all that stuff. So the impact on us is not only that we have different tools and we have to do some odd things to get access to the developer builds, but also just the interaction between us as people is so much slower right now.
Yeah, it cannot be overstated how much easier it is when you're all under one roof and you can turn your chair and lean back and poke somebody and get a status update or info that you aren't necessarily otherwise privy to because of sort of the channels from which information flows and whatnot through different departments. But what we can talk about today is some of the more high level things that we're working on currently and will be coming out in 8.5 and then future updates further down the line.
Cool.
So I don't know if there's
Sounds
one
good.
thing in
So
particular
many
that we
people
could
sharing
like
about
jump
the rollback.
into.
Yeah, I can imagine, mate. Like,
maybe we could just start with.
I still think
sort
that
of
they
the
should have done away with
general,
the 7-day ban, yeah. And
I guess.
well, I'm in two minds.
Post,
Either we've kept the
NPC
whole 7-day
adjustments
ban,
with,
Sure.
how
and
the group scaling
no
feels
rollback,
and the difficulty of
or
challenging
straight away it's
heroic
straight up
and all that
punishment,
stuff.
done the rollback.
I
And
think I
that
can
is
speak
it.
for everyone on the design team when I say that we're pretty happy with where things landed. But like I said earlier,
Because
we're
they have
still
said
paying
themselves
attention
that
to,
there's still
or now
people
rather
exploiting
we're
in the game at the
focusing
moment.
on
So
outliers and
I guarantee
certain
these are
things
people
that we
that
can't necessarily address
done
with a
glitches
more blanket
last
pass
week
on
and
NPC
didn't get
armor and
punished
health
for it.
values or their damage. So now we're focusing again, like I mentioned earlier, things like True Suns and explosive ammo, for example. It's very easy to suddenly feel and be, for all intents and purposes, very tanky. You have 1.6
Exactly, Hutch.
million armor, or 1.3 million armor, and you've got your shield out, and then suddenly a veteran turns around and just blows you up in about 3 seconds. That's not, that's something that we need to look into and address, and that's still part of what we're working on.
Right. I mean, when it comes to various balance things, you say outliers, right? I mean, there's been some discussion about things like the classic M1A. I myself am running one. I asked you before the stream about the
Black
build that
Tusk
I'm
have
running.
always
Like,
been
is it
OP, mate.
intended, for example, that we can just not have to scope in and still get the headshot bonus damage by using the Crusader Shield and the M1A?
Yeah.
Things like that.
So I can comment on that particular example. So the M1A Classic, or the Classic M1A, and Striker or Crusader Shield and Focus is certainly has risen up to the top of the meta pile currently, and is very.
Oh my god! No, what you
and
need to
effective.
do with that is stop
Yeah, it's very strong.
rifles from being able to use
Unfortunately, it's
headshot
not
scopes
necessarily
with a
working
fucking
as
Crusader
intended,
Shield out.
and you should only be getting the focus buff when you're actually aiming through a scope that's 8 or 12x, a high-powered scope. So we have a fix slated for further down the line to address that. We're still discussing exactly what what our intentions are there. It's difficult to balance around a combination of precision, damage, and being able to also have the safety of a shield in front of you. Even though a lot of those builds are very squishy, it's not exactly copacetic with the fantasy of a sharpshooter, if you catch my drift. So we're still discussing it.
Interesting.
We're also aware of just sort of the ongoing conversation right now that there's a sentiment amongst the community and maybe the sort of higher echelons or higher tier players that there's not a lot of variety in builds. And a lot of that, I think, has to do with some overtuned named items that we will, so that we're okay with best in slot items. We have no problem with that, and we want to maintain that as well. However, we did, unfortunately, we simply got the numbers wrong in a few cases, and it's out there now. I was discussing it last night, so none of this is like I'm going to be a surprise to anyone, but Fox's Prayer, Contractor's Gloves, and the Hollow Man. Unfortunately, like I said, the math just wasn't. We didn't do due diligence on that, so they're slightly overtuned. We're going to address that. They're still going to be very powerful, though. They're going to do what they say on the tin, and they're going to be very effective at what they do. And we want there to be certain best in slot items because we want to validate the chase, and we want it to feel good when you get these things. Unfortunately, there's sort of like, it's a complex sort of combinatorics where not only those 3 particular named items have 3 very powerful attribute rolls on them, but they're also on brand sets that are sort of further compounding the issue because Contractor Gloves is an LMG brand and Fox's Prayer is a rifle brand. So they sort of go part and parcel with our 2 sort of like, quote unquote meta guns, LMGs and rifles. So
okay, let's hold up for a second, right?
We have some plans.
So
to
the
address
2 lead gear
one
sets that come
particular
out with
is that we're
Foundry,
going to
right?
bring assault rifles.
Basically,
they are rolling
re-released
damage
D3
to health.
FNC from
The
Division
rolls
1.
currently are 2
You've
low,
got the
so that
claws
will
out
get a bump.
holster, yeah,
And we're also going to bring
increased
up the
pistol
numbers
damage,
and
melee
improve
damage, right?
and buff some of the
Well,
underperforming named items as well.
isn't
so
that going to
things
then
like
become
Punch
a
Drunk
meta issue as well?
is going to have. Again, the numbers aren't quite final yet. We're still in the process of working on it, but Punch Drunk is going to have. I think we're playing with 20% headshot damage rather than just the 10.9 that it is right now. So that's going to receive a buff. Claws Out is going from. Claws Out is actually quite bugged. So it's gonna roll with a skill tier for core attribute as it always should have. It's going to have additional pistol damage, and we're going to buff the melee damage from 200 to 500% or something like that. So
okay, that's not bad.
Just to sort of play into the rip and tear fantasy that we're trying to evoke with that item.
Yep. Cool. And of course,
there's more we could talk about in terms of sort of perception and talents as well. Like I do think it's worth addressing the conversation around build diversity. I don't know if you want to go into that.
Yeah, I think it's really good, especially because like we talked about this a little bit about what we see on social media and Reddit and all that stuff, and then what we see in our internal data and how people are
now I'm interested
building
with
a lot
effect
more
builds.
Diverse things. So maybe you can talk about how you look at that specifically.
Yeah, again, so sort of part of this like, oh, the only viable builds are LMGs or an MG5 and a classic M1A. We know that it's not really true. And there is actually quite a lot of diversity. It just so happens that, perception is 9/10 of the law. So it's very easy to sort of get wrapped up in this community sentiment or community narrative that there's not a lot of options. We're privy to big data and analytics, so we actually have more concrete numbers to back up our suspicions that there is some variety. In particular with skill builds as well, people say like, oh, skill builds are useless or there's no point in having a skill build. Well, they're quite valid and they're quite popular. Hardwired as a set it's up in our top 5 of gear sets.
No, Hardwired
and what people
last
wear
title
in terms
update
of
used to be
talents
very good
and whatnot. So, and Unbreakable, is at the top still. So it's not just people running around with Vigilance and Glass Cannon or Focus. There's quite a bit of diversity there. But we do acknowledge the fact that there are, certainly there's a niche, and that niche is very strong. So we're working on sort of addressing that. And I want to repeat myself here. We don't like I said, we're okay with best in slot items. We're not going to just suddenly nerf the classic M1A into the ground or the MG5 or the Bullet King or what have you. We're going to just do our best to maintain the strength of, easy access to different playstyles. That's our prerogative. Like that's our main goal as far as the balance is concerned. And it's no fun if only, if the best build is the holy trinity of the Hollow Man, Fox Sprayer, and Contractor gloves, and a classic M1A and a Striker shield with focus, then that's
Yeah, I agree,
it's not
mate.
really fun for anyone.
Definitely.
So we're gonna do our best to sort of bring up the underperformers and address the
I can
few
see why we
outliers.
can't recalibrate exotics in this
I mean, I'm really
update,
excited for what you
but
said about the.
I think it's still stupid that you can do it with
buffs
names, but
coming
you
in.
can't do it with
I think that
exotics.
one kind
So
of flew
I
under
think
the
it should be
radar
flat across the
with
board.
a lot of people.
Yeah, and again, that's just a good example of, that's on us. We got the numbers wrong. We did quick math and fudged a bit. So
Mm-hmm.
we're going to address those.
Cool. No, it's good to hear that.
And this is exactly what
some better
happens.
stuff. I like it.
They're admitting to messing up.
Um,
This is why you should have a
Or to
PTS.
go a little bit back on
before rushing
how we're
content
going to
out.
present it, because now obviously Bruce is saying something and then chat is like, hey, I'm only heard half a sentence, or you're nerfing the things that I like and all that stuff. We will make sure to give you a heads up on what's coming, again with 8.5, but also with what we currently call TU9, which is coming later in April. So you can give us feedback on that as well. Can give us reactions to that. You've seen a couple of the first passes on exotics as well that Matt did. So
Yeah.
you see those, and we can maybe have a small segue into this and say we are also
Absolutely.
looking at exotics. Right?
TU 2.0.
Yeah, so what's out there now is sort of
Mid-May,
the first
June is probably the
step
raid then.
in one, we acknowledge that some of the exotics aren't performing as well as they should be and are underwhelming, and we're going to address that. So this is the first step in that process, but it's sort of the first stage in a two-stage rocket, and unfortunately we've had to delay. We would love to make one big package, right, and improve everything in one fell sweep, but the work from home situation obviously is challenging, and we're doing our best to get what we can done while also working on content and whatnot, in addition to balance and stuff. But for sure, exotics are on the plate. We had a sync last week, a very productive meeting, looking at what we want to do, and I'm excited for that. There was one, I feel like I would be remiss this one if I don't mention it, because it's something that sort of has squeaked in, and I think is going to also help with this sentiment of there not being a lot of build diversity, and not in the near future, but soon, we're going to be allowing players to loot the currently Raid 1 exclusive chest and backpacks for Tip of the Spear, Negotiator's Dilemma, and Aces and Eights. So right now, it's I think part of the perception of there not being many builds is that, unfortunately, half of the sets are, or almost half of the sets are, their full potential or their full power is locked behind a raid. So we're going to
you should
open
complete
that
the
up
raid
as well,
in order to get the
so
set.
that you can acquire the backpack and the chest pieces outside of the raid.
You spoiled Nikki's update for next week, but yes.
Or was I supposed to stay mum on that? Okay.
It's fine. We'll talk
Now
about
it's
that
out there.
later.
It's fine. I think people are
That's a
also
mistake.
Apologies to Nikki.
That's a mistake right there.
That's fine. Yeah, one thing that I want to add to this as well, because I mentioned Nikki now, we also have lots more to talk about. So we're continuing to do State of the Game from home, but we have Bruce on this week. Next week Nikki will be on. He'll also talk about more about exotics and stuff like that, and maybe even something that people will be excited about is the upgrade for exotics. No details yet, but will be topic next week. So we will have more info on that. So we'll try to continue giving you these little small tidbits that hopefully then will give you the big picture that we want to show you, that we're just currently a little bit slow on because we're at home.
Yeah, exactly. So the roadmap, just for people as an update, TU 8.5 is slated to come next week, correct?
Yep.
And then we're looking at later this month, putting out TU 9. So there's a lot of changes coming, and updates and things being addressed and all that sort of thing. I do want to move on. We're already over the usual time we have, but there's a lot of important stuff to talk about. I do want to kind of go back to the current status of the seasons, because we're still in season 1, Shadowtide, and the next target, Venus, has become available as of today.
Yeah,
today or
exactly. Like
yesterday?
you will now be able to hunt her down in Washington as well. That also opens up some more control points that you can reset. Do keep in mind, I've seen a couple of people resetting their manhunt to do control points. If you don't finish a target fully, it will reset your progress.
Mhm.
It does what it says on the button, so be careful with the button. So if you want to finish Venus first, make sure that you do that. There's a bunch of control points with that as well, so you'll have some new blueprints and all that. Additionally, there's also a double XP event right now going on, as with all new targets. So if you are a little bit behind in levels, you can have a good boost on those as well.
I also, while I think of it, some people are saying, well, I've had sanctions taken against my account and I can't play for 7 days, and I'm not going to be able to do the Venus target stuff. That's not
No,
how it works, right? We talked about
no,
it
no, no.
on the stream last week. You still have access to those other targets, so even if you haven't done the first one, you can do that before the whole event ends. It's still
Yep.
going to be available to you, so don't worry about that.
All targets are available until the end of the season,
Mhm.
so there's no rush. Even if you like currently say like, oh, I'd rather wait for the next league or for the next global event, that's totally fine. You don't have to do them when they come around. The only thing that will go away is the double XP event that only lasts for this week.
Bullshit.
The other thing is obviously the Urban Jungle Apparel event is live now, so there's 4 new outfits, 4 new weapon skins. There's a mask. The mask is super cool. If you haven't seen it, I'm actually going to bring it up. I wasn't going to bring up stuff from last week, but I really want to show this mask again because it's super cool. You can now hunt that down. There's 10
It's
other
not really that cool,
items.
to be honest with
I
you.
just need that mask. That's what I need.
Yes, and when you
Um,
log in, you get a free key for it as well. So part of the season for level 40 players, if you log in, you get a free key and get an item. And then also, like, you can obviously purchase them if you don't want to do the shade level things, and which was quite popular by for some players, is you can also gift keys to friends. I know sellout and all that, but I know that a lot of people are very much looking forward to giving friends that might not be able to get all of that the rest of the keys that they need. So I think it's a very nice thing for people to do if they want to.
Perfect. And that one, so the event, actually, Chris, I was asking you to maybe clarify this. So March 31st, the Urban Jungle event starts. April 20th, it ends, and then there's a week of redemption. Is that
I
What's
did not
the-
do my due diligence and check it. I think that is the case, but I don't know. I don't want to say anything right now because I just don't know.
okay? I have here
I'll-
that
I'll- We'll make sure that it's explained next week. I'm
Okay.
going to put a post-it up on my monitor here.
Okay.
And obviously, I mean, we can also post it today on forums or wherever you have the question.
Before we end the stream, actually, I want to, because we said before, like we spent a large chunk of this stream addressing the biggest hot topic in the community right now, obviously the account sanctions that have taken place. If you do want to find out more about that, or if you missed it, that was at the front of the stream, so you can go back and watch that. But there is obviously a lot of people out there who are enjoying other parts of the division, and I'm going to go ahead and make sure we do agent highlights for the week. So I have a couple of things that that George managed to find, which I think are super cool, and I want to take a look at this first one from Jarui, which is like the coolest. I wish I could bring this up higher res, but that's the composition of that whole thing is super cool. I love that. I don't know if you guys are watching the stream, Chris, Bruce.
Yeah,
No?
the lighting is fantastic.
Yeah.
It's
So
very
if
cool.
you are a fan of awesome art, go and follow Xiaorui R on Twitter. Super cool. Love it. So please keep those ones coming in. I have some more art as well from Serenius with this. Really cool as well. Again, completely different style, but super cool as well. A little bit.
I think this resembles a lot of us during the stay at home part, where we just like sit around and like do silly things with our partners. So I really appreciate that. I'm going to try that pose out with my girlfriend later.
Yeah, please do, and please hashtag agent highlights for that, Chris, so I can share it next week. Please.
Do you have a TikTok?
Pixar, it didn't happen.
Oh no, I'm too boomer for a TikTok.
All right, sorry, I went back to this other one, but it's super cool. All right, so like I said before, if you wanted to find out more about our chat, about what happened with account sections, that's at the front of the stream. I've seen, we always knew these streams are they're kind of tough to do, but I think they're important to do. I saw some conversation in chat. You know, you must be really embarrassed doing the stream. I wouldn't say it's that. I would say it's just, you know, some things are hard to talk about, and sometimes tough thing happens. I would personally be more embarrassed if we just didn't do a stream and we just cancelled it and didn't want to talk about it and did the whole thing where we bury our heads in the sand and whatever. That's
Which
not
you
gonna help anyone.
typically do
So
every other week.
You've always had a commitment from us here on the Division that we will have the discussions that are tricky. So I want to thank Bruce and Chris for being part of that. It's tricky to talk about.
Yeah, I'm
right?
too boomer because I'm OP
it
and I
is.
have to use a glitch to kill
But
him
it's
because
the reality that we're all
we
facing.
fucked up
We-
NPC scaling.
You know, it's hard. But again, we want to make sure that you're all aware of what's going on. As a sideshow, I hope you're all taking care of yourself and making sure that you, you know, washing your hands and doing all that good stuff.
Yes,
Is-
please stay safe, stay in with your friends and family, and make sure that you follow all the rules that Hamish said, like washing hands. It's really important.
Because we care
1
about
meter
you.
apart.
2 meters.
2.
2 meters.
Okay.
Is it Canadian meters or European meters?
It's yeah, I don't know. It's always in flux.
Exactly.
But enjoy video games. I mean, if you've had sanctions against your account, you'll have to enjoy a different video game for a week. But there are a lot of those.
Yeah, something better than
But
Division
We
2.
will catch you again next week.
Oh,
Hopefully we
joking.
can get on and do
Actually, no,
some gameplay
Titanfall 2 is
streams.
actually a lot of
Crazy
fun lately.
time, so we haven't had a chance to do that. But we'll continue showing up and telling you what's happening. If you want to have updates as they come to light, Twitter is always the best place for that. Forums, and like we said before,
You can.
reporting things.
To be honest,
letting us know
not really.
There are things you want to give us feedback on or criticize. That's always something.
The only thing I was like, I wouldn't even say I'm
keep it
salty
cool,
to be fair.
respectful,
Like,
and we'll do the same. All right,
you know,
that's
they've
gonna be
never
all
had the
for
balls
stream
to do
today,
bans
and,
since
we'll
Division
catch you
1
again
when they said they would
next
do
week
it,
or
and they
before,
never
and we'll
did.
do some gameplay streams.
And
Cool.
even when, you know, about a
Have a
week
good
ago,
night.
they never even indicated
Take it easy.
bans.
Night,
They were
everyone.
just like, look, we'd prefer you not to do it. And yeah, then the ban hammer hits. So it's like, it is what it is. But again, they've done it with no notice, and that's what's pissed people off. And then to add the 2-week reset on, you know, within that time. Yeah, I can sort of see why people are really pissed off with it, to be honest with you. These guys, they're not showing enough transparency at all as developers, and that's where the community gets annoyed. Like, we've got an update coming, what was it, next week you said? And then we've got another one coming end of the month, well, which will be 1.9 at the end of the month. So TU 2.0 is going to be mid-May, start of June, and that is going to be the raid. When, if you think about it, had they have PTS'd and tested the living hell out of this game before releasing Warlords, there would not be as many bugs in this game as there currently are. And, you know, they could have released the raid a lot sooner. I mean, it's just a straight up fact, really, when you think about it. But when you now look at in-game content, right, you've got leagues, the global event, the manhunts. Don't get me wrong, manhunt's cool. Global events are always cool. But when you look at the global events and directives, it's a copy and paste from Division 1, just slightly tweaked. The leagues is what I call filler content, just like how I called episode 2 with the DC outskirts with Kennedy College being, you know, up for 1 week, down for 1 or 2 weeks. You know, again, that was filler content because they thought it was a cool idea, but it was an absolute load of shit. And that's me calling it how it is. You know, how you had to wait, was it about 3-4 weeks to get the Diamondback exotic, you know, time gated. You know, that was a bit scummy, to be fair. But yeah, so many things with this game where they say they learned the lessons and evidently they don't. And I think there's going to be more like this going forward.
No, we don't want them
So,
back first. We want the tanks to take the
That's
aggro
the
and
state of the game stream over. And peace out. And Hutch, I'll talk to you in part in a bit.
Some tests